Hey all, welcome to this Docker analogy series where we are learning and mastering Docker. In the last video, we talked about volume mount and bind mount. We also learned about differences between the two. Now, before I take up the next big topic, I wanted to cover some of the topics that we did not talk about but are important topics. So I want to talk about the Docker entry point and CMD. So what is the difference between the entry point and CMD? Forgive the typo here. I missed the Y here. Please ignore that. And then after that, I will discuss about the environment variables. Environment variables are a important part of any production grade application. So we'll talk about how to pass the environment variables and what are the different ways to do that. Okay. So let's get started first with the Docker entry point and CMD. I will bring up my CMD now here. Okay. Now we have our Docker images. We have we don't have any Docker containers running at all. Okay, so we are good. We are on a clean slate. Let's go back to our app. Okay. Now I want to show you something, right? So let me comment out this. Let me comment out the CMD from here. Okay. So we are just building the container. We are installing the dependencies and exposing the port. Let's see what happens if we build this. So let's do this docker build -t for tag, name is to do app :0.0.3 and my Docker file is present here. If it's present somewhere else, you can give -f and then give the exact path. Okay, let's do this now. So I'm building this. Okay, it's good. Okay, so that went through. Now let's see if we see the image. Yes, we see this. Let's run this now. Docker run. Let's not run in a detached mode. We want to see what is happening right now. Okay, so -p port 3000. We want to expose that port, and then the image I want to run is to do /-app 0.0.3. Let's run this. Okay. Now let's see what happened, right? When we run this Docker run, it tells you, or it gives out the container ID, which is the current executing ID, right? So if I do docker ps, I don't see anything running. So docker ps is supposed to show the running container. It's not showing anything. That means this container is not running at all. Let's look at docker ps -a. Okay, now it tells you, yeah, oh, the container that you ran 003 was in fact exited. It was exited 26 seconds ago. So meaning they started the container, and as soon as it started, it exited. Why did it exit? Because it did not have any process to run. So container life cycle, right? Container life cycle will last as long as there is a process running within that container. Okay. Now we ran the container, we installed the application, but we did not run this application, right? So we did not give this command. That's why your application wasn't running. Okay. That's the reason the container exited. Okay. Now let's bring this back. Let's run this one more time. Let's build this. Let's get the build command. Okay. I will name this now 004 tag version. I'll update. Okay. Now let's run this. Let's do docker run 004. Now you can see application is back to running, which was old what we had, right? Now let's replace CMD with entry point. Okay, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I have replaced CMD with entry point. Let's see now. Let's build this first. Build this name. Give this tag 005. Okay, we got this running. Docker image, we got this, like we have this image. Let's run this now. Docker run 005. Application is up and running, right? So if you look at this, CMD and entry point more or less same, right? Now what's the difference then? Okay, let's look at few more examples. Okay, now before I look at the example, so entry point, as it says, like when the container comes into created state, and when you execute or run a container, right, just before running the container, this is the command that executed, and this is what brings into a running state. Okay, and then CMD also does the same thing. Okay, so we'll see what is the difference. Okay, so generally entry point is considered to be hard to override. Okay, at times you can give an entry point, but you may want to override that entry point also. Let's see how can we do this. Okay, so I am here right now. Let me kill this, and now let me show you quickly. If I do docker run help, and if I go to entry point, right, so what it says is override this default entry point of the image. Yeah, so let's try to build this docker file with a wrong entry command. Okay, wrong in the sense of, because we are trying to run a node.js app, right, so definitely it will not run the node.js app, but let's see how the entry point works. Okay, in this case, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the image. So let me do docker build -t to do app 0.0.7, and my docker image exists here. So let me build this. Okay, I think we are good here. Let's run docker run -p 3000:3000, and then my image is to do app 0.0.7. let's run this. Okay, now it's going to echo, like it is not echoing anything. Okay, because we haven't added any parameters. If we had added hello world, it would have echoed that, right, it would have echoed that. But let's say let's have this as is. Okay, I want to override this entry point. How can I do that now? Okay, so let's try this. Okay, after running this, we know that we can add an entry point. So I will add an entry point here, minus entry point, and then I will add node. Okay, that's the command I want to replace with, and then I want to pass a parameter. Parameter can be passed after the image name. Okay, the parameter index.js, right? Now if I run this, you will see the application started running. So we were able to override this entry point. Okay, we were able to override an entry point, override this command which were like echoing empty data. We are able to override that. We are able to pass the parameters and make our applications run. Okay, so this is one thing. Now let's change this to CMD. Let's change, I think before I change this to CMD, yeah, I think I'll tell you the difference later on. Let's change this to CMD. Let's have this CMD as echo. Okay, let's build another version. I think before I do this, let me do echo and then hello world. Actually, hello world. Let's build this. Let's run this docker run -p 3000:3000, and then image name to do app 0.0.8. right? If we run this, we know that it echoed hello world and then exited because it has nothing else to do, right? Let's see how can we override this now. Okay, now what we'll do is we will run this, and then after that we will add a command here. Command is node src/index.js. right? Now you can see the application is running. We were able to override the CMD. We are able to override and make it run and pass the R arguments, right? If you want to check if it's really working, let's change this, so that it fails, right? And then it says, okay, yeah, you know what, I don't find this file anywhere, so I can't run your application. It is overriding, but during overriding process, it wasn't able to find it, so container exited. Okay, let's run this. So we are back to running now. Now, what happens if we have entry point and CMD both, right? The entry point will definitely run, okay, and whatever CMD parameters we pass, right? If we have entry point, you can pass entry point like node, and then you can add CMD, okay, CMD here as, let's say, src/index.js, okay. What happens is, like, when you have both, the entry point is used, so this executable is used, this command is used to run the container, and your CMD becomes kind of a extra parameters, okay. And this is not considered as a complete command then, okay. Let's see how can we do this. Like, so I will remove this, I will build a new version now. Let's build the new version. It's 999. No, I'm sorry, running it. I'm extremely sorry about that. Docker build 999. Okay, very good. Let's run this as is 009. It will fail, like, because it doesn't have any parameters, right? And if you look at docker run help, docker, you can see we can add an entry point, right, which is the options, okay, and then we have a command and an argument, right? So if you have entry point, okay, then your commands and arguments are actually they actually become an argument to your entry point, okay. That's the important thing, that's the important difference between entry point and command, okay. Now that we have entry point, okay, now whatever we give after this, right, it becomes an argument, right? And if I pass this, it will run fine, okay, it will run fine, because it will use this node as an node as a executable, and then it will pass this as a parameter, okay. But if I try something like this, it would fail. If I try node here, okay, it will not work, because then this entire thing gets sent as an argument to your entry point, okay. That's why it is not working. Had it been a command, we would have been able to override this. I hope you understand the difference now between entry point and command, okay. What I'll do is I'll clean up few things now. Docker image, I'll clean up these extra images which I've created, okay. Let me docker rmi, and then to do app 0.0.9. I know if I can clean up them all, okay. Docker, let me remove first all containers, docker rm, then docker ps -a -q, okay, good. 08 07 6 5 another 4 3, and do we have 2 as well? Okay, no such image. Okay, let's get back to our old CMD. Let's build an image so that we can continue the next topic regarding the environment variables, okay. This is what it was. Let's build this, bring the build command. I will name this 003 maybe. Okay, so image is there. Let's run this. I don't need to provide any command here because we already have command, okay. So if I run it now, it should be 003. If I run this, it will work fine, okay. Now let's look at the code here inside index.js, right. So what we are doing here right now, we are listening on port 3000, which is kind of hard coded port, okay. But we know when you are talking about production application, you will have your development server running on a certain port, but when it actually goes to production, it can run on a different port altogether. It could be mapped to a higher order port. If it's a Kubernetes application, it can happen, right? So you don't want to kind of hard code things like, you know, what port you are listening on in the code. Rather, you would like to rely on some configuration file or some kind of a environment variable. So whatever environment variable get passed to you, your code has to honor that. Okay, so let's see how can we learn about environment variables and make changes to this app. Okay, so I want to remove this hard coding. Okay, let's see how can we do this. Okay, so what we will do is we will create a variable const app underscore port. Okay, and then I will get this variable process dot env dot app port. Okay, so I will, this is wrong, app port, I will rename it, I will do it camel case just like the other variables, right? App port, or if that port is not present, then I will select by default that 3000 port, right? And I will replace this 3000 with app port. I will change this to a literal string here and add what port I am listening on. Okay, so it will print what port I am listening on. Besides this, let's add yeah, I think let's just finish this one. Okay, so right now if I am not providing any port, it will listen to 3000, but if I provide environment variable, then it will honor that environment variable. Let's see how can we do this. So let me go to Docker file. Okay, and then create a environment variable here. Okay, so what I'll do is I will add env and add environment variable. So environment variable I want is app port, and value I want to give is, let's say, 4000. I want to listen to port 4000. Okay, and I will expose the same port now. Okay, let's build this one 004. Let's run this docker run. Now the publish port has to be 4000 because we gave 4000 port within. Okay, and then the image name, so to do app colon 0.0.4. let's run this, and this code outputs, you know, what port we are listening on. If you look at this, it outputs the console.log. Okay, I think we forgot to remove this, but we have the app port here. Okay, so bear with that. So let's run this. Okay, so if you look at here, you can ignore this, but if you look at this, we are actually listening on port 4000 now. Okay, and if I, let's say, open localhost, so if I open localhost 4000, it would not, you know, show anything, but if I do 4000, we'll see your app here because that's where we are listening on. Okay, let's kill this one. Let me remove this one. Okay, so the thing is, we added environment variable in Docker, right? But how can we like update this? Like, you don't want to be putting this in the Docker file, right? Then it would be kind of a hard coded thing, right? We want this to be updated. Okay, so let's remove this for now. Okay, we don't have to expose it here. Okay, that's fine, even if we don't expose this, because we are publishing the host container with the host machine port with the container port. Okay, let's build this 005. Now if I run this, right, if I run this on, let's say, port, so I'll run this 5, okay, and then I will expose, let's say, I think let's forget about this right now. Okay, I will run the 5th version. Okay, and then you will see it is running on port 3000. The reason is it doesn't have any environment variable, so it picked up the 3000 as a default variable. Let's see how can we pass the environment variable from CLI. Okay, so if I do docker run --help, okay, you will see something like this here, env or e, okay, where you can provide the list of environment variables. Okay, let's try to use this one. So I will say docker run, and then what I'll do is I'll do minus e as an environment variable. What is my key? My key is app port. What value do I want? Let's do it 5000. Okay, let's do it 5000, and let's expose this port on 5000. Okay, let's run this. I think there's some app is running on my machine. Let's do it 6000. Yeah, so you can see I have the application running on 6000 now. Okay, and if I open this on 4000, it wouldn't work, but if I open this on 6000, it would. Did I miss anything? Local is down, application is running fine. Did I miss anything? Minus e minus p, which is fine. Okay, let me try some other port. I don't know, ports are occupied, or let me try this port like 8080 8080, map the same port here, 8080 8080. Okay, did I mess up anything? Minus p. Okay, should work fine now. Okay, listening on port 8080. Let's try that now, 8080. Yeah, so you can see I think I might have had some issues with my port mapping there. Okay, but I'm passing the new environment variables, and it is honoring that. Okay, let's see how can we pass the list of environment variables. Okay, so for example, let's say I have another, let's say in production grade application, there are like like a lot of environment variables. Let's see some of the environment variables, like how many environment variable can we pass, and how can we pass it, right? So let's say I am doing console.log, and then I am printing, let's say what environment is it? Okay, question mark, and then and here I will, okay, and I'm passing this node environment as a one more environment variable. Okay, if I build this now, if I build this let's say with version 6, okay, let me run this with 6 version. I am passing the port, but not anything else, right? Not passing the other environment variables. Okay, now if you look at this output now, so my application is still running on 8080 because we have passed that app port, but we haven't passed the production node environment, right? So let's see how can we pass this now. Okay, so another way, I mean the way to do is, let's add minus e port and pass what node environment we want. Let's say prod. Now if we run this, you can see it is printing prod. If we change this to dev, okay, it will print dev. So this is the way you can pass environment variables. Okay, and make your applications not dependent on any hard-coded things. Okay, and same thing can be done in Dockerfile also. So way to do it in Dockerfile is, let's say when you add a environment variables, you can add / and then add as many environment variables as you want. But we kind of refrain from doing this, and this is the way you can add multiple variables. This is the example I am sharing with you. Okay, let's remove that. Yeah, so I think we are good here. Okay, so another way is, generally when in the production environment you don't kind of use this this syntax, right? Like passing my environment variables, if there are passing environment variables with minus e, if there are 10 environment variable, that becomes difficult. Okay, so there is another concept or another mechanism. If I do docker run help, and if I go here, you can see there's this thing called env file. Okay, so let's try this option. Okay, first let's create a file, env dot list. Let's create this file. Okay, it looks like I already have this file. Okay, let me remove this. So I am adding application port as 5000. Let me change that to let's say 8090. Okay, that's the change I want to see, 8090, and then instead of prod I'll say UAT now. Okay, so I have this file now. I'm saving this. Okay, now if I'm running this, what I'll do is I will change this port to 8090, change this to 8090. Now instead of passing this thing like this, I will give it like the environment variables, right? So I will say minus env file, and then file name, right? env dot list. Yeah, and let's run this. So you'll see now the environment is UAT. It is running on port 3000 wide. I think I got that wrong actually. So if I open the vi file, yeah, this is application port, this is not. And what did we define? We have defined this as an app port. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, before, because we did not have application port there, it took a default port. Okay, let's change this. Let's see, should work fine. Docker run, and then yeah, you can see it's working on 8090 with the UAT as an environment. So these are the mechanisms through which you can pass the environment variables and get rid of any hard coding, or be your application more dependent on this configuration on environment variables, so that it becomes easy for different kind of deployment, be it production, UAT, or development. I think that's it on this video, everyone. I hope you understood the idea and understood both the concept today. Thank you.